Hello everyone. We are talking about the genital system development. In this section, we'll deal with the female genital tract. This section has been divided into the development of the paramesonephric duct. Paramesonephric duct is the precursor of the female genital system, so we'll see how it develops into the adult female genital system. Then we'll see how the uterine tubes are formed. The uterine tubes, they finally open into the uterus. So we'll see how the opening of the uterine tubes in the uterus takes place, and then finally how the upper part of the vagina is formed. So moving on with it, we have the development of the paramesonephric ducts first. So the paramesonephric ducts, they develop lateral to the mesonephric ducts by a vertical invagination of the coelomic epithelium. So referring to the figure, this is the coelomic epithelium. This is the mesenchyme of the nephrogenic cord. So the paramesonephric ducts, they are formed lateral to the mesonephric ducts, and they are formed by a vertical invagination. Here you can see this is a vertical invagination of the coelomic epithelium. So coelomic epithelium, it invaginates inward and forms the paramesonephric ducts, which lie lateral to the mesonephric ducts. So when traced caudally, this is the caudal tracing. When they are traced caudally, they cross in front of the mesonephric ducts from lateral to the medial side and then come close to midline, come close to each other in the midline. So here you can see when these paramesonephric ducts, they're traced caudally, they first lie in front of these mesonephric ducts and then come to lie close with each other. So the two mesonephric ducts, they fuse in the midline to form a vertical duct known as the uterovaginal duct. So the fusion of these two paramesonephric ducts caudally in the midline results in the formation of the uterovaginal canal. This is known as the uterovaginal canal. So the upper end of the paramesonephric duct, it remains open in the coelomic cavity. This is the upper end of the paramesonephric duct. It usually remains open in the coelomic cavity. The caudal end of the uterovaginal canal, this is the caudal end. It grows down and comes in contact with the dorsal wall of the phallic part of the urogenital sinus. So this is the phallic part. There are two parts of the urogenital sinus, the phallic part and the pelvic parts. The phallic part is the cranial part. So when this uterovaginal canal, the lower part of the uterovaginal canal, it grows distally, it comes to lie in contact with the dorsal wall of the phallic part of the urogenital sinus. A fenestrated septum is actually present between the two parts of the uterovaginal canal. This is this fenestrated septum. It is not a complete septum, but a septum with fenestrae, that is small opening within itself. So the paramesonephric duct, it has a cranial vertical part. So this is the cranial vertical part. Then it has a middle horizontal part. This is the middle horizontal part. And finally it has a caudal vertical part. This is the caudal vertical part. So it has been divided into two parts. Three parts: a cranial vertical part, then a caudal, then a middle horizontal part, and finally a caudal vertical part. So what is the fate of the paramesonephric duct? So paramesonephric duct, it forms the fallopian tube. Now you can see this upper vertical part, it forms the fimbriae and the ampullary region of the fallopian tube. This middle horizontal part, it forms the fallopian tube in itself, and the lower vertical part, it helps in the formation of uterus. Here you can see uterus and upper part of the vagina. So let's see how the development of the uterine tube takes place. So uterine tube on each side is formed by the unfused part of the paramesonephric duct. Initially the first portion, that is the unfused part of the paramesonephric duct, the vertical portion, the cranial vertical portion of the paramesonephric duct. So this is the portion we are talking about. The fallopian tube elongates and it becomes tortuous. So with development, it elongates and also becomes tortuous. The original site of evagination of the paramesonephric duct from the coelomic cavity forms the abdominal ostium of the uterine tube. So this is the abdominal ostium of the uterine tube, and it represents the original site of evagination of the paramesonephric duct from the coelomic cavity. So fimbriae develop later around the margin of the ostium. So these are the fimbriae, finger-like projections, which actually develop around the ostium later. So let's see how the development of uterus take place. It is formed by the uterovaginal canal. It is obvious it is formed by the terminal, the caudal vertical portion of the uterine tube. This is the uterine tube, and it helps in it is formed by the uterovaginal canal. Let's see how that is formed. The primitive uterus differentiates into two parts: the body and the cervix. So the upper part of the uterus is known as the body, and the caudal part is known as the cervix. In future, the cervix is in fetus, the cervix is larger than the body of the uterus. So in the fetal life, the cervical portion of the uterus is larger than the body of the uterus in itself. So there is angular junction between the two paramesonephric ducts. This is the angular junction. It becomes a convex dome and forms the fundus of the uterus. So this structure, this angular junction, forms a convex dome and helps in the formation of fundus of the uterus. So here in the figure you can see this was the fenestrated septum, which is actually lost to form the body of the uterus as well as the cervix. The cervix is initially larger in the fetal stage, and this angular junction between the two paramesonephric ducts, this forms a convex dome and helps in the formation of fundus of the uterus. The myometrium of the uterus is derived from the surrounding mesoderm. This is a similar commendum that occurs throughout the developmental system. That is, the muscular component and the connective tissue is usually derived from the mesoderm. Moving on, now we'll see how the development of uterus takes place. So a uterovaginal canal has been formed. The primitive uterus now differentiates into two parts, a body and a cervix. So in fetus, the cervix is usually larger than the body of the uterus. Now the initial angular junction between the two paramesonephric, these are the two paramesonephric ducts, and this is the angular junction. It forms a convex dome. Here you can see a convex dome has been formed and forms the fundus of the uterus. So the myometrium is derived from the surrounding mesoderm. So now refer to the figure, it will come very easily. So this is the terminal portion of the uterovaginal canal. This uterovaginal canal initially had a fenestrated septum in between it. The fenestrated septum is actually lost. The upper part of this canal forms the body of the uterus, and the lower part of this canal forms the cervix. Now, in fetus, the lower part, that is the cervix, is larger than the body of the uterus. The angular junction that lies between the two paramesonephric ducts, this is the angular junction. It forms a convex dome, and hence it forms helps in the formation of fundus of the uterus. Now the myometrium of the uterus is derived from the mesoderm that surrounds the area. Now what happens, the caudal solid tip of the paramesonephric duct, so this is the caudal solid tip of the paramesonephric duct here. It comes in close contact with the urogenital septum. So it comes in contact with the urogenital septum and causes the formation of two sino-vaginal bulbs. So let's see what is happening. So the solid caudal tip of the uterovaginal canal comes in contact with the dorsal wall of the pelvic part of the definitive urogenital septum. We talked about it before. It induces the formation of two outgrowths, which were seen in yellow in the previous picture. These were known as the sino-vaginal bulbs. So these are the sino-vaginal bulbs. So the endodermal cells of the sino-vaginal bulbs, they proliferate rapidly and form a vaginal plate. So they proliferate rapidly and form a vaginal plate. This is the vaginal plate being formed. So cells from the tip of the uterovaginal canal also proliferate and add to the vaginal plate. So cells from the tip of the uterovaginal canal, they proliferate and contribute to the vaginal plate. Now the vaginal plate is interposed between the uterovaginal canal. This is the uterovaginal canal and this is the urogenital septum. So it is interposed. It lies in between the urovaginal canal and the urogenital septum and urogenital sinus, and it is of composite origins from cells from both these ends. This vaginal plate will result in the formation of vaginal fornix, the vagina, as well as the hymen. So the central cells of the vaginal plate, they tend to break down. So here in the figure, this is the vaginal plate being formed. These are the sino-vaginal bulbs initially. So these sino-vaginal bulbs are forming the vaginal plate. So the cells that lie in the center or the lumen of the vaginal plate, they now break down. The plate is completely canalized to form the lumen of the vagina. So there's wing-like expansion of vagina around the cervix. Here you can see this is the wing-like expansion of vagina around the cervix to form the fornices of the vagina. These are the fornices. So vagina remains separated from the phallic part by a thin plate of tissue which is known as the hymen. So the partition between the vagina and the phallic part of the urogenital septum is known as hymen, which is actually a thin membranous structure. So this was all about the development of the female ductal system. In this section, we saw how the adult oviducts or the fallopian tubes were formed. The fallopian tubes then finally opened into the uterus. We saw the developmental sources of the uterus and how the adult uterus was formed. We saw how the adult cervix was formed and how parts of the vagina were formed, and finally the adult vagina was formed. I hope you understood it. For further such sections, keep watching sqadia.com.